Good morning, everyone. Today we are examining Isaiah chapter 56, and as we talked about yesterday, it's only 12 verses long. It's not a very long chapter, and we're going to look at some lessons that we find in this particular chapter this morning. As you examine chapter 56, it's really two parts. You have the first 7 verses, which are really one discussion, or the first 8 verses rather, and then verses 9 through 12 are the juncture into another section, which is actually going to overlap into chapter 57. And so you have this statement at the beginning of chapter 56 that talks about the importance of keeping justice and doing righteousness. He says, "For my salvation is about to come and my righteousness to be revealed." And so God here is talking about the importance of doing what is right, of having the right sense of justice and righteousness, and recognizing that He is going to have his justice and righteousness revealed, which is going to be talking about all of the things that he has been stating throughout the book of Isaiah as far as judgment and justice upon his people. But then you come down to verse number 3, and he says, "Do not let the son of the foreigner who has joined himself to the Lord speak, saying, 'The Lord has utterly separated me from his people.' Nor let the eunuch say, 'Here I am a dry tree.' For thus says the Lord, to the eunuchs who keep my Sabbaths and choose what pleases me, and hold fast my covenant, even to them will I give in my house and within my walls a place and a name better than that of sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. Also the sons of the foreigners who join themselves to the Lord and serve him, and to love the name of the Lord and to be his servants, everyone who keeps from defiling the Sabbath and holds fast my covenant, even them I will bring to my holy mountain, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations." There is some question as to whether or not this is a statement that is looking forward to the time of the church and the acceptance of all people, or whether it is simply a statement concerning the fact that God is willing to welcome, even at this time, anyone who is willing to be obedient to him. And I think it actually tends to be the latter, because there's emphasis concerning the Sabbaths, there's emphasis concerning the temple and various other things, as well as the offering of sacrifices. And so it's interesting to note, when you go back to the Old Testament, the limitations on who was allowed to offer sacrifices and who had to do certain things. But God says, I'm not as concerned as much with where a person is from as whether or not they're willing to do what it is that they've been commanded to do. And certainly when you're talking about a eunuch, you're talking about an individual that is not without blemish as far as their physical situation is concerned, with the general use of the term eunuch. And yet God says that's not what I'm concerned about as much as anything else. And it's interesting that he says that when you go into the days of captivity, because you're going to have those like Daniel and like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that when they are brought into the service of the king, they are going to be made eunuchs. That was the common practice at that particular point in time. And so you have this particular situation that says, God says, these people are not any less of my servants or any less acceptable to me, even being in these situations, whether they be foreigners, whether they be eunuchs. I will still accept them, I will still rejoice in them, and they will still have a place in my house because of this. And it's a very important message, talking about the way that God is going to respond to people of different situations within the framework of righteousness and justice. And then you drop down to verse 11, and he begins talking about the leaders of Israel, and he begins talking about the mentality of the Israelite leaders. And he says in verse 11, yes, they are greedy dogs, which never have enough, and they are shepherds who cannot understand. They all look to their own way, every one for his own gain from his own territory. In other words, the only thing they care about is themselves. They are greedy dogs who never have enough. If we're not careful, we get to the point in our lives where it doesn't matter how much we have, we're never content. We never have enough. There is always a reason for us to be wanting more. There is always something that we wish we had. There's always someone who is upset because they don't have what somebody else has. We need to be very careful that we are not greedy dogs who never have enough, but instead to learn like Paul, in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. Those are some of the things that I have pulled out of Isaiah chapter 56. I hope that they're things that have benefit to you. Tomorrow we will come back and we will pick up with Isaiah chapter 57. Until then, I hope you have a great day.